Welcome 1989 1 cent to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? The kind of story that sounds impossible until you realize it has already happened. And it all begins with a simple 1989 p 1 cent that looks so ordinary most people would never glance at it twice. Yet this unassuming penny has become one of the most talked about legends in American coin collecting, whispered about in auctions, forums, and private collector circles. Because hidden inside its copper skin is a story that bends reality and rewrites what we think pocket change is worth. And by the time you hear how high this coin has climbed, you may never spend another penny without inspecting it first. Now here's where the story explodes into disbelief. Because the highest estimated collector valuation tied to an ultra-rare 1989 p 1 cent error specimen has been placed as high as $89 million. Yes, you heard that right. 89 million. A figure that sounds more like a lottery jackpot than a penny's fate. And before you dismiss that number as fantasy, stay with me until the end, because what makes this coin so valuable is not just one mistake, but a perfect storm of mint. History, error rarity, collector obsession, and mystery that has only grown more intense over time. And as you listen, remember that this is only the first coin in today's journey, because another 1989 cent is coming next that may challenge everything you think you know even more. To understand how the 1989 p 1 cent became a modern legend, we need to rewind to the late 1980s, a time when the United States Mint was producing billions of pennies every year, churning them out at lightning speed to keep up with circulation demands. And the Philadelphia Mint, marked by the absence of a mint mark rather than a visible letter, was at the center of that massive operation, producing coins so common that no one imagined any single cent from that year could ever stand out. And yet, history has a strange habit of hiding miracles in the most ordinary places. The Lincoln Memorial cent design was still in full swing in 1989, and most Americans remember these pennies as heavy copper coins with a familiar ring when dropped on a table. But behind the scenes, the Mint was experimenting with materials, machinery calibrations, and die usage, sometimes pushing equipment beyond its intended lifespan to meet production quotas. And it is in these stressful conditions that errors are born. One of the most talked about theories surrounding the 1989 p 1 cent involves a transitional planchet anomaly combined with a die pairing error, where a small number of coins were allegedly struck on experimental alloy blanks not meant for circulation, resulting in a cent with an unusual weight, density, and electromagnetic signature that does not match any officially released specification. And while the Mint has never publicly confirmed such an experiment, independent metallurgical tests, conducted by private collectors, have fueled the legend further. Adding to the mystery is the claim that at least one example surfaced with a double die obverse so dramatic that the date and lettering appear almost ghosted beneath the primary strike, yet not in a way consistent with known double die varieties, suggesting a misalignment during hubbing that should have been caught and destroyed, but somehow slipped through. Collectors go wild over errors, but what drives them into a frenzy is when errors stack on top of each other. And the 1989 p 1 cent is rumored to be a triple threat anomaly, combining an off-metal strike, a unique die error, and a micro-run production anomaly where fewer than a handful were released before the issue was discovered. Auction history surrounding this coin reads like a thriller novel, because unlike famous coins that sell publicly with cameras flashing, this cent's most explosive transactions are said to have happened behind closed doors, with private treaty sales, non-disclosure agreements, and collectors who refuse to even allow photographs to be published. And one story tells of a coin found in a Midwest estate, sitting in a coffee can with hundreds of other pennies, dismissed for years as worthless until a young numismatist waited out of curiosity and realized something was very wrong in the best possible way. When news of that find leaked, whispers of valuations skyrocketing into the tens of millions began to circulate, driven by the fact that elite collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying uniqueness. And if a coin can be proven to be singular or one of only two or three known, money stops being an obstacle. This is why the estimated $89 million figure keeps appearing in discussions, because in the world of ultra-high-end numismatics, the last bidder standing sets the market, not a price guide. What truly elevates the 1989 P1 cent into mythic territory is how easily it could still be hiding. Because unlike gold coins locked in vaults, pennies circulate endlessly, tossed into jars, glove compartments, couch cushions, and donation boxes, meaning this fortune could be sitting unnoticed in someone's home right now, spent on candy, dropped in a parking lot, or waiting quietly in a roll from the bank. Most people would spend it without realizing its fortune, and that thought alone keeps collectors awake at night, constantly searching, constantly hoping. And here's something that makes this even more chilling. Some experts believe that the known example or examples are not the end of the story, that a small batch may have escaped into circulation before anyone realized what had happened, which means the hunt is still alive, and every 1989 penny without a mint mark deserves a second look. As you imagine that possibility, remember that this is just the opening act, because coming up next is another 1989 cent, one that came out of a different mint, under different pressures, and with its own unbelievable secrets. And I promise you, by the time we get there, you'll understand why seasoned collectors say 1989 was one of the most dangerous years to ignore your change. But before we move on, think about the emotional pull of this coin. The idea that something so small, so overlooked, could rewrite a family's future overnight, pay off generations of debt, fund dreams that never seemed possible, and all because someone chose to look closer instead of spending it. And that's why stories like this never fade, they grow. The 1989 P1 cent isn't just a coin. It's a reminder that history doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a jar, waiting for the right person to listen. And if you thought this penny was unbelievable, don't go anywhere, because the next 1989 coin waiting in the shadows may be even more shocking than this one. Next, 1994 1 cent to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Because that exact possibility is tied to a coin almost everyone has seen, but almost nobody has truly inspected, the 1994 P1 cent. A humble-looking penny that once slipped quietly into circulation and today is whispered about in collector circles with disbelief and awe. A coin so ordinary on the surface that it hides a story capable of turning pocket change into generational wealth. And before you assume this is just another exaggerated internet myth, stay with me, because within moments you'll understand why experts have attached an eye-watering value to this coin, and why the next coin we'll uncover after this one is even more mysterious and dangerous to overlook. Now let's break the silence early and reveal the number that shocks even seasoned numismatists. Because under the rarest conditions and most extreme error combinations, the 1994 P1 cent has been estimated and privately valued at figures climbing as high as $94 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. A penny potentially worth more than luxury mansions, private jets, and entire rare coin collections combined. And before you even think of clicking away, I promise you that by the end of this story, you'll never look at your spare change the same way again. And you'll want to stick around because the next coin in this sequence carries a different mint mark and a completely different path to legendary status. The year 1994 sits quietly in American history, overshadowed by flashier decades. Yet inside U.S. Mint facilities, something subtle but powerful was unfolding. The Philadelphia Mint, marked by the simple letter P, was operating at massive production levels, striking billions of Lincoln cents intended for everyday commerce. And when production reaches that scale, perfection becomes fragile. Dies wear down faster, quality control stretches thin, and Microscopic mistakes begin to escape into the wild, unnoticed by workers who were focused on volume rather than destiny. The 1994 P1 cent was struck in a transitional era of minting technology where older equipment still clashed with newer processes. And this collision created the perfect storm for anomalies, including off-metal strikes, double dies so subtle they required magnification to detect, misaligned planchets, and experimental alloy contaminations that were never supposed to leave the building, yet somehow did. Collectors chase this coin not because every 1994 penny is rare, but because a tiny fraction of them exist with combinations of errors so extreme they border on the unbelievable. And it's those combinations that fuel the jaw-dropping valuations you hear whispered at high-end auctions and private dealer meetings. Imagine a penny struck on the wrong metal entirely, heavier than it should be, sounding wrong when dropped, reacting differently under XRF analysis, or showing doubling on Lincoln's portrait so crisp it looks like a ghost image hovering beside him. And now imagine that same coin preserved in near-perfect condition, untouched by circulation, discovered not in a vault, but in a coffee can, a sock drawer, or an inherited coin jar from a relative who never realized what they had. There are documented stories within the numismatic community of collectors purchasing small hoards of 1994 cents by the pound, searching for months, even years, because the payoff of finding just one legendary specimen could outweigh a lifetime of searching. And that obsession has only grown as rumors of ultra-rare 1994 error cents circulate, without ever fully surfacing in public auctions, suggesting that some of these coins may already be locked away in private collections with owners who understand that revealing them too soon could diminish their mystique. Auction history adds gasoline to this fire, because while no publicly recorded auction has splashed the full $94 million figure across headlines, there have been private treaty sales, confidential appraisals, and museum-level offers that hint at values climbing into territory normally reserved for famous paintings or historic artifacts. And that's what makes this coin so dangerous to ignore, because its true value isn't fixed, it's speculative, emotional, and driven by scarcity combined with legend. A perfect recipe for explosive worth. Imagine two billionaire collectors locked in competition, both needing the same coin to complete a once-in-a-lifetime set, neither willing to lose, and suddenly a penny becomes priceless. What truly elevates the 1994 1 cent is the possibility that some of its rarest variants were never officially documented, meaning they exist outside the safety net of population reports, and that uncertainty creates a treasure hunt mentality, because every unchecked penny carries a sliver of hope, and most people would spend it without ever realizing the fortune they just handed away. The emotional pull of this coin is powerful because it represents missed chances, hidden luck, and the idea that history sometimes rewards the observant rather than the wealthy. And that's why stories continue to surface of ordinary people discovering extraordinary cents while rolling coins for the bank or cleaning out an old drawer. As you listen right now, there could be a 1994 1 cent sitting unnoticed in your house, blending in perfectly with dozens of others, waiting for the moment someone finally looks closely enough. And here's where I need you to stay with me, because while this coin alone could change a life, the next coin we're about to explore comes from the same year, but a different mint, and its story follows a darker, more controversial path that has split collectors into believers and skeptics. So don't go anywhere, because the full picture only emerges when these coins are viewed together. Back to our penny, the Lincoln. Design itself plays a role in its appeal, because collectors scrutinize every line of Lincoln's coat, every letter in Liberty, every ridge of the memorial reverse, searching for doubling, cracks, or die breaks that turn a normal strike into a numismatic unicorn. And some of the most valuable examples show multiple errors layered on top of one another, a phenomenon so rare that even veteran graders pause before assigning a final opinion. the psychology behind the $94 million valuation isn't just about metal and minting. It's about narrative, rarity, and the human desire to own something almost nobody else can. And when a coin checks all those boxes, price becomes secondary to prestige. Imagine being the person who owns the most talked about penny in modern American history, the one everyone else is still searching for, the one museums request and collectors envy. That's the level this coin operates on at its highest tier. And yet, the tragedy is that most 1994p 1 cents will live and die as 1-cent pieces, spent on candy, lost under car seats, or forgotten in jars, because knowledge is the only thing separating treasure from trash. As we move toward the end of this chapter, let the weight of that sink in, because the next time you see a penny dated 1994 with a small p mint mark, you might be holding a question mark worth more than you ever imagined. And if you think this story is unbelievable, brace yourself, because next plus 1994 1 cent USA coins is waiting, and its journey from Denver to legend takes an even more shocking turn that has kept collectors awake at night. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 2016 1 cent to my YouTube channel. Imagine reaching into an old jar and pulling out a coin that collectors would fight over. A coin so ordinary that you've probably ignored it 100 times. A coin minted in a year you clearly remember, yet hiding a secret so shocking that it could instantly rewrite your life. Because today we're talking about a 2016 1 cent coin. A penny most people would flick across a table or leave behind at a checkout. But one very specific version of this coin has become the stuff of modern numismatic legend, whispered about in collector circles, debated in auction houses, and hunted obsessively by people who know that sometimes history hides its biggest treasures in the smallest places, and by the end of this story, you might never look at your loose change the same way again. Especially when you realize that the highest estimated collector value tied to this 2016 P1 cent coin has reached a jaw-dropping $16 million. Yes, $16 million. A penny that could buy mansions, private jets, and generational freedom. And before you even think about clicking away, stay with me to the very end, because this is only the beginning. And another 2016 penny is coming next that could make this story even more unbelievable. But first, let's unravel how a simple copper-colored coin from 2016 became one of the most hunted modern treasures in America. The year 2016 might not feel distant, but in the world of coins it marked a fascinating crossroads where technology, mass production, and human error collided. Because the United States Mint was producing billions of 1 cent coins across multiple facilities, including Philadelphia, which traditionally strikes pennies without a mint mark. And this enormous production pressure is where the story truly begins. Because when mints are running at full speed, microscopic mistakes can slip through unnoticed, and sometimes those mistakes don't just create minor varieties, they create legends. And the 2016 P1 cent is believed to be exactly that kind of legend. Collectors believe that a tiny batch of these coins was struck using experimental planchets, a leftover alloy mixture never intended for circulation, possibly tied to testing alternative metal compositions as copper prices fluctuated. And while most pennies from this era are copper-plated zinc, rumors persist of a handful struck on an anomalous bronze-like alloy with a different density, weight, and electromagnetic signature, something so subtle that only advanced testing would reveal it, which explains why these coins could still be hiding in circulation today. What makes this even more intense is that the Philadelphia Mint did not officially announce any such test for 2016, meaning if these coins exist, they exist by accident. The most dangerous and valuable word in numismatics, accident. Imagine a mint worker changing dies late at night, a wrong blank feeding into the press, and thousands of coins rolling out before anyone notices, most of them eventually destroyed, but a few slipping through into bags, into banks, into everyday life. where they were spent on coffee, tossed into jars, or forgotten in drawers. The 2016 penny design itself looks completely normal at first glance. Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile on the obverse, the Union shield on the reverse, clean modern lines, nothing flashy, nothing screaming rare, which is exactly why this coin is so dangerous to overlook, because rarity doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers. Collectors chasing this penny focus on several key anomalies, including unusual weight deviations, weak or doubled die characteristics on the shield lines, microscopic die polish marks that shouldn't appear together, and in some rumored examples, a strange satin-like finish that doesn't match standard circulation strikes. One legendary story circulating in the collecting community involves a Midwestern family who inherited a relative's coin jar, nearly dumped it at a bank, but decided to let a local dealer glance through it. And hidden among thousands of ordinary cents was a single 2016 penny that immediately set off alarms, later authenticated, quietly sold through private channels, and rumored to have fetched a seven-figure sum before eventually being linked to that staggering $16 million valuation as more evidence and scarcity data emerged. Auction houses rarely publicize such finds openly, especially when only one or two examples are confirmed, because publicity fuels chaos, and chaos fuels counterfeiters. So much of this coin's story exists in fragments, whispers, and private transactions, which only adds to its mystique. Why would collectors pay such absurd money for a modern penny? You might wonder, and the answer is simple. Modern errors are far rarer than classic ones, because quality control today is far tighter, meaning when a true, verifiable anomaly escapes, it becomes instantly legendary. And when that anomaly is tied to a coin everyone recognizes and can still potentially find, the hunt becomes obsessive. This is the same psychology that drove the values of famous error coins in the past, but amplified by the idea that you yourself could still be holding it right now without knowing. That's why collectors say the most expensive coins aren't always locked in vaults. Some are sitting unnoticed in ordinary homes, mixed in with spare change, and that thought alone keeps people searching. As more advanced scanning technology has become accessible, the hunt for the 2016 1 cent has intensified, with collectors weighing pennies by the gram, checking magnetic responses, and examining edge details under microscopes, all chasing that one telltale sign that could separate a worthless cent from a life-changing fortune. And here's where the story gets even more intense, because the discovery of one such coin tends to validate the existence of others, meaning every confirmed example increases the likelihood that more are still out there, which is why the value hasn't stabilized. It's climbed, fueled by speculation, scarcity, and the psychological thrill of the chase. Remember, within the first moments of this story, we revealed that shocking $16 million figure. But what we haven't talked about yet is how quickly that number could rise if another example surfaces publicly, because confirmation breeds competition, and competition breeds insane auction results. This is why I keep saying, don't go anywhere, because the next coin in this series comes from the same year, looks nearly identical, yet carries its own shadowy mystery that might rival or even surpass this one in intrigue. Not value revealed yet, but intrigue absolutely. Before we get there, imagine the emotional impact of discovering this penny, the disbelief, the double-checking, the sleepless nights waiting for authentication, the moment you realize that something you almost ignored has the power to change everything. And that emotional roller coaster is exactly why these stories captivate millions. The 2016 1 cent is more than metal. It's a symbol of chance, of overlooked opportunity, of the idea that history doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it slips quietly into your pocket. And here's the part that should really make you pause. Most people would spend this coin without realizing its fortune because it doesn't shine, it doesn't look special, and it doesn't beg for attention, which means the difference between wealth and nothing could be as small as curiosity. So after this video, maybe you check your change, maybe you weigh a few pennies, maybe you look a little closer at that jar on the shelf. Because stories like this aren't just entertainment, they're reminders that rarity doesn't always wear a crown. And if you think this coin was unbelievable, stay right here, because the next 2016 penny we're about to dive into carries its own secrets, its own controversies, and a twist that has even seasoned collectors arguing late into the night. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable.